Some mornings in Texas, the coffee is darker than your past mistakes and hotter than the promises you're about to make. My kitchen, a battlefield of good intentions and domestic disasters far, was about to witness another chapter of my legendary home improvement saga. The house came from my parents. A 2-story suburban dream that had seen better decades. Every crack in the wall whispered stories of bygone eras. Every creaking floorboard sang a melancholic tune of structural fatigue. And I, Jack McClain, former oil field engineer, current home renovation enthusiast, was about to write my own chapter. Sarah, my wife, she knows me too well. When I get that look in my eyes, that dangerous mix of confidence and complete ignorance, she just sighs. "Jack," she says, "engineering oil rigs doesn't make you a contractor." But Texans aren't known for listening, especially to rational advice. It was a scorching Wednesday afternoon, the kind of heat that makes asphalt shimmer and turns pickup truck steering wheels into potential skin-burning devices. I was returning from the office, my trusty Ford parked at an angle that would make parking instructors weep. And then, the advertisement. Handwritten, slightly crooked, looking like it was drafted by someone who might have been experiencing a mild earthquake while writing. "Tex-Mex renovation," screamed the header. "Any work, fast, cheap, guaranteed." The phone number looked like it was written by a drunk spider walking across an ink pad. Most sensible people would have walked past, not me. Nope, I'm a McClain. We don't do sensible, we do legendary. Ricardo, the team leader, was a character straight out of Central Casting. Imagine a guy who looked like he could fix anything, or accidentally destroy everything. His Ford F-150 was less a vehicle and more a rolling testament to automotive survival. More rust than paint, more character than functionality. His crew? Oh, they were something else. First, there was Miguel, the one-eyed veteran who looked like he'd survived more construction sites than most people at hot dinners. His remaining eye had a gleam that suggested he knew something you didn't. Then Carlos, young, perpetually chewing something that might have been gum. Might have been last week's sandwich. Always moving, always munching, and Big Mike, wearing a Las Vegas shirt so old it might qualify as a historical artifact, sporting a belly that suggested a deep committed relationship with local barbecue joints. "We'll make your house perfect," Ricardo proclaimed. And when he smiled, it was the kind of smile that made insurance adjusters nervous and homeowners slightly terrified. Sarah just rolled her eyes. "Here we go again," she muttered. Little did we know this would be a renovation adventure for the ages. A story that would be told and retold, becoming a legend in our little corner of Tex. If someone had told me in the morning that my house would turn into the epicenter of a construction apocalypse, I would have just laughed. But life loves to surprise you, especially when it comes to home renovation. Ricardo and his crew burst into my house like conquerors. Conquerors whose attack plan was clearly drawn up after a generous portion of tequila and very approximate mathematical calculations. Miguel, the one-eyed Mexican with experience that would make Noah himself jealous during the Ark's construction, first pulled out a measuring tool that looked more like a relic from an archaeological museum of construction instruments. His single eye squinted so enthusiastically as if he were not measuring a kitchen but unraveling the mysteries of the universe. "Look, Senor Jack," he proclaimed triumphantly, "Biban, here will be the perfect kitchen." I looked where he was pointing. Honestly, what I saw inspired about as much confidence as a treasure map, drawn by a 5-year-old. Carlos, the perpetually chewing kid who seemed to exist solely through constant fast food consumption, settled right in the middle of the kitchen. Around him, an instant camp of wartime proportions formed. Tools, chip wrappers, some incomprehensible wires, breakfast remnants, all of this instantly transformed my neat linoleum into a battlefield after a massive offensive. Big Mike, who was clearly more interested in lunch negotiations than the renovation itself, just stood there, breathing heavily and periodically wiping abundant sweat from his face with a huge checkered handkerchief. In his worn-out Las Vegas shirt, which had clearly seen better days, he resembled a tired gladiator who had accidentally wandered onto the kitchen front, Sarah, my wife, watched what was happening with an expression as if she were watching a documentary about a disaster. Her look was more eloquent than any words, and if looks could kill, my repair crew would have turned to ashes in a matter of seconds. "We begin the great transformation," Ricardo proclaimed solemnly like a general before a decisive battle, and then they started removing the old tiles. Oh, merciful God, what happened next? Renovation is always a lottery. But what was happening in my kitchen resembled a Hollywood action movie with elements of an absurdist comedy. One-eyed Miguel attacked the wall with such ferocity as if it were a personal enemy of his entire clan. Each jackhammer blow sounded like a cannon shot. Pieces of old tile scattered like a fan, turning the kitchen into something like a minefield after an artillery bombardment. "Be careful!" I managed to shout, as if. Carlos, the eternal eater, managed to do the unimaginable. In one hand he had a jackhammer, in the other a huge sandwich with something vaguely resembling Mexican filling. Meanwhile, he managed to periodically bite off the sandwich, aim, and miraculously hit everywhere except the right spot. Big Mike, the main assistant, and as it turned out, an involuntary destroyer shuffled nearby. Every movement was like an elephant dancing in a china shop. When he tried to help, things only got worse. And then the unexpected happened. Mike caught an old water pipe. First, a thin stream appeared, then more, and then a real geyser. Water shot up to 1.5 meters. Moreover, with such force that it swept away part of the recently dismantled tiles and scattered the team's tools. Ricardo tried to do something. He grabbed some rag as if he was going to stop a water flow the size of Niagara Falls with an ordinary kitchen towel. Sarah by that moment stood in the doorway, turning into a pillar of righteous anger. "Jack McClain!" Her voice was like a tornado roar. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Water continued to pour. Tools were floating. Carlos managed to finish his sandwich. Miguel was shouting something angrily in Spanish. Mike was shuffling guiltily in place, and I just stood there and realized that the renovation had only just begun. After the water apocalypse in my kitchen, a dead silence descended. Only the dripping water violated the tomb-like silence. Ricardo was the first to recover. He slowly turned his head, surveying the destruction like an artist contemplating his masterpiece of complete devastation. "Well," he drawled thoughtfully, "this is not exactly how we planned it." Carlos, who managed to keep eating some snack even at this moment, just shrugged. His t-shirt bore traces of food and water splashes, a picturesque canvas of Texan renovation reality. Miguel muttered something furiously in Spanish. His single eye shot lightning bolts either in my direction or towards the broken pipe. Big Mike shuffled guiltily, making characteristic squelching sounds with each step. His Las Vegas shirt was completely wet and hung like a flag after a prolonged rain. Sarah stood in the doorway. Her gaze was heavier than a lead weight and colder than Arctic ice. "Jack," she hissed through her teeth, "you will explain to me what is happening here." The kitchen looked like after an alien landing. Scattered tiles, floating tools, some wire fragments, and water everywhere. Small streams spread across the linoleum, reaching the farthest corners. Ricardo, businesslike, climbed into his battered Ford, pulling out some racks and ropes. "Do not worry, senor," he announced with the unshakable confidence of a provincial magician. "We will fix everything," and immediately managed to get his huge belly caught on a wrench sticking out from under the sink. 2 weeks after the water apocalypse, something incredible happened. The insurance company was already aware of our epic saga. Sarah barely spoke to me, and the kitchen looked like a post-apocalyptic movie set. Ricardo's team had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a legend and mountains of construction debris. And then came an unexpected twist. On an ordinary Thursday evening, someone rang the doorbell. A short, elderly man in a perfectly pressed suit stood on the threshold. "McClain?" he asked. "Yes?" I answered, puzzled. I'm Robert White, chief engineer of the county construction company, he introduced himself. We heard about your situation. He walked into the kitchen, surveyed the destruction with a professional eye, and unexpectedly burst out laughing. Miguel worked for us 20 years ago, Robert said. He was fired for similar incidents. Carlos is his nephew. And Ricardo? Oh, he's a legend among local construction crews. It turned out this trio was notorious for catastrophic renovations across Texas. They would appear like ghosts, create chaos, and disappear. We'll pay for everything and renovate, Robert said. On our dime, with a professional guarantee. Sarah, hearing this, smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. And I realized the main thing. In Texas, even the most terrible renovation can end with an unexpected miracle.